Hello everyone, my name is Muir and this is X4 Foundations. And today we're going to be going over the medium fighters that have the best pitch to weapons ratio for each of the major factions in the game, at least the ones that you can play as. And so what we have here starting us off is the Falcon Vanguard. But before we go to that, let's talk about what each ship is going to have. So each ship is going to have combat thrusters and shields. Both of these will be from the faction that the ship is coming from. And they will then have combat thrusters, that's important, and pulse lasers. Pulse lasers are great because they deal about twice the damage of a beam emitter, and they will reliably hit enemy ships. Even when the enemy small ships, even when those ships are moving at high speed, if you have the experience that it's just not really working for you with pulse lasers, you can switch over to beam emitters. Those are hit scan. They just do like half the damage of a pulse laser. Around there. It's not quite half, but it's around. But yeah, what counts as a medium fighter for our purposes here is it has at least 2 gun mounts, and it has a very high pitch ratio. So first off, we have the Talati Falcon. Now, the Talati Falcon is a fairly nice ship that you can get at most, if not all, Talati wharfs. And as you can see, we gave it engines and shields. The main difference between the factions is really going to boil down to the shield types, which you're mostly going to worry about. So Talati shields, they have the most upfront shields, but they have relatively low recharge and a relatively long recharge delay. That is the main difference when it comes to that. So that's the Talati Falcon. These are the numbers that it has down here if you are interested in knowing that. Let's go on to the next one. This next one is the Khalees. I believe this is from the Pioneers, the Terran Pioneers. So the Terran Pioneers, they just took like substandard stuff from the Terrans and sort of made it work. So Terrans, their shields, if you are curious, this thing has like 4 shields, so it has pretty high shields. The recharge rate is from all 4 shields added together. The recharge delay is slightly better than Argon's, but I believe the recharge rate is slightly worse than Argon's, something like that. But Terrans are basically just like the Argons. But the pulse lasers are also slightly different. They have their own specific types of pulse lasers. But yeah, what I would go with here is 2 combat drives, 4 Terran shields, and 2 Terran pulse lasers. And that would be a great setup for a Khalees to be an interceptor of sorts. Alright, next up is the Lux. The Lux is created by the Vigor Corporation, which, as you can probably tell from how haphazard everything seems to just be sort of welded together in places, this is a pirate faction. So you have to become friends with these guys if you want to get these ships, to my understanding. I don't know if the blueprints for these ships are actually in the game yet. But as you can see, they tend to have a nice pitch ratio as well. They have 1 shield generator, so that is a thing, and they have 2 pulse laser mounts over here. Just 2. Now these guys, they tend to do pretty well. As you can see, with the Argon stuff, it isn't... Yeah, the delay is a little bit longer with Argon compared to Terran, as we saw previously, but if these are what you can get your hands on, because you started as Vigor, then these guys will do the trick no problem. But alright, let's go on to the next one. That is the Mako. Now the Mako is a boron ship, and borons have to use their own specialized equipment. So what we have here is 2 all-rounders, some combat thrusters, at least that's universal, right? Boron shield generator, and then we have kind of something we haven't seen yet. And that is we have a phase gun that's anti-hull, and then we have the ion Gatling, that's anti-shield. The ion Gatling here comes out with a different aspect, which is this slows down the enemy ship the more shots it hits with it. The more times you hit the enemy ship with it. What this means is that the enemy what that means this means is that the Mako can actually win dogfights just by stopping the enemy ship fighter from being able to move. Now, you'll notice something else that's just crazy, and that is the pitch ratio. Well, this guy pitches at 170 degrees a second, which is the highest in the game. I think like the 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 cock or whatever they're called, the cock, they beat this slightly, and then there's the boron scout, starts with an I, and that one is that I think that one has a pitch ratio of like 90 or something. It's really, really, really high compared to this. But yeah, this is what you'll want to do with the boron Mako. Still a really good ship. Like 80 of these, 60 of these guys will clear out almost any fighters that you throw at them. But all right, next up is the Mamba. The Mamba is from the Split. Now, the Split are a faction of hit and run ships. That's their entire shtick is they run in, they do a bunch of damage, and then they scream and run away. Because if they don't, they scream and die. That tends to be how the Split work. So what we have here is two split shields. The split shields are just in general the worst overall shields in the game. However, and this comes into the hit and run aspect of it, they are intended to fly in, do damage, their shields take the damage, and then them fly away, recharge their shields, and come back. So they have the shortest shield recharge delay in the game, but their recharge rate is atrocious compared to like the Paranids or everybody else for that matter. Their shields aren't the highest either. They really are just intended to fly in, take some chip damage, do some damage, and then run away. So what we have is the split engines, combat thrusters, split shields, and then two neutron gatlings. These are like bolt repeaters, except they don't have to recharge. There are thermal disintegrators. You can use those as well. They're actually really cheap. And those have the added benefit of they do damage through shields if you wanted to use thermal disintegrators instead of neutron gatlings. But all right, that is the Split Mamba. Let's go on to the next one. My favorite non-Mako medium fighter. And that is the Nova Vanguard. So the Nova Vanguard is great. Its pitch is 120 and its roll is 140. This thing's engines just like they'll do that. They'll do this, no problem. And so what that means is this ship is hyper maneuverable, can roll on a dime. It's great. What I like to do is, well, when we have two combat engines, combat thrusters, combat shields, and then we have two pulse lasers on this. You can switch this over to beam emitters if you want. Again, you can. And if you guys have if you have these guys masked, they will do a pretty good job of clearing enemy fighters really quickly. But this is the Nova, one of the cheaper combat ships in the game as well, which is kind of nice. Next up, we have the Takoba. The Takoba. I had Mexican food earlier today, so you know, tacos. But this is from the Terrans. So the Takoba is more maneuverable than the Pioneers ships. And this is basically the Terrans medium fighter that you would mass into a carrier or a station, then have it come out to go and destroy everything that's out there that is aggressing you. But yeah, it has two shields, three engines, and two guns. So combat engines, combat thrusters, shields, and then pulse lasers. These pulse lasers are different from the pulse lasers that the Commonwealth ships get that are on pretty much everything else. These guys instead, they fire one shot, but they also do more damage. So instead of like firing two shots, they fire one shot, and that one shot over time, that one shot burst, I guess, that overall does more damage per second than the Alliance, no, not Alliance, but the Commonwealth pulse lasers. The other thing is that this means that these can be a lot more accurate than the Commonwealth. You're so these are actually really, really nice. But and you can get these from a Terran wharf as well. I don't think you can get them from Pioneer wharfs though, so just be aware of that. All right. Next up is the Theseus. All right, so the Theseus is the sort of tier 2 ship of the Pyramids. The first Pyramid, I don't remember what it's called. It has 2 guns instead of 3. However, its pitch ratio is actually worse than the Theseus's with the same thrusters. It's kind of interesting. So, what you want to think about how you want to think about this is the Theseus is basically the Pyramid fighter, and then you'll see what's called an Ares that has 4 guns instead of 3, and that's more of their bomber. That is the main difference. But we'll be doing bombers a bit later. Anyway, what we have here are Pyramid drives, combat thrusters, Pyramid shields. Pyramid shields, they have the shortest ignoring split, recharge time, and they also have a fairly high recharge rate on their shields as well. The idea with Pyramids is sort of like the split, but it's different because for the split are just hit and then run away and recharge and come back. The Pyramids are hit, deal damage, outmaneuver the enemy while dealing damage, and hope that your shields are able to get back up before you take too much extra damage. So, and they also have fairly high hulls as well, so they can take hits. But yeah, that is the Pyramid Theseus of Vanguard. And as always, it has 3 pulse lasers, so it has more DPS, it has more damage than the other fighters, the other medium fighters, but yeah, it's pretty good at what it does. Now, for most of these, you do need to get at least up to rank 10, so you can become friends with those factions. You can do that just with small traders. It's really, really easy. If you want to know more on that, I'll probably have a tutorial for how to very quickly build reputation with a faction. So we'll see where that goes. All right, guys, my name has been Muir. These have been the medium fighters that I like to use as interceptors in X4 Foundations, and I hope you find these useful. I'll see you guys later. Bye, everyone.